But let's look at this here. One problem for every NBA team that we didn't see coming. And, of course, we're going to focus on the Mavs. And the one I think, Reg, you could probably guess. Let's see if you can actually guess what Bleacher Report has as the one problem that they didn't see coming to start the season.
I feel like I need to full disclosure this.
Oh.
I looked earlier.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's good preparation.
It wouldn't
That's good prep.
Yes.
That's good prep.
My bad.
I got you. No,
I decided. Good. I know you're used to me not doing good prep.
No,
so
don't do that.
Like, the day that I tried to do some good prep, I done messed up the bit. My bad.
No, you came through. That's good. That's good.
No, but I wouldn't have guessed that this was the one that people looked at, but it's fair, which is, I mean, the way that JaVale McGee has not played well, which is funny because that was something I independently was thinking about recently, in part because I mentioned yesterday, I think, I realized every time I come to these Mavs games, I just tap in a little bit late and I look up and I'm like, oh, JaVale McGee's minutes already gone. Okay, I haven't seen how he played.
All 12 of the minutes done for him tonight.
Yeah. And yesterday I watched it from the start and boy, he looked creaky. Again, the word that sticks in my head is creaky. Like he looked like the Tin Man, right? He looked like he needs some WD-40 on his joints. Like it just doesn't feel right. He looks like a guy who was just needs some wind. And we were talking to Tim McMahon earlier today, and he's, talking about how that's a 30-some-year-old dude who has largely been a backup. And I understand that, but even in the way that he plays, I've seen him be more energetic. Last season, I've seen him be more impactful. Last season. And yes, sometimes in sports, it could fall off a cliff. But I didn't anticipate it falling off like this. I really
and this
didn't.
fast at that.
So and plus, like what he does well on paper, again, understanding it's on paper. Now we're talking about in reality, but on paper, what he does matches what the Mavs want from him, which is a guy who's going to come in, give some effort, be able to run, rim run, which he is capable of doing. Be able to affect shots at the rim, which he is capable of doing, right? Like it doesn't seem like what they're asking of him is unfair for what his skill set is. And yet, but alas, here we are in a place where it just does not seem to be matching at all. And I'm a little boggled by it. I guess, again, haven't watched a lot of him play. So, hey, maybe as we see more, I will be able to give you better answers on it. But at this point, that is really fascinating to me. And it's problematic because he is one of a few bigs that you have. And you really needed all the bigs that you have to work out the way that you wanted in order for this to work. Meaning, the three that you were planning on playing, JaVale McGee, Christian Wood, Maxi Kleber. You take one of those out, and again, now you are down, and now you are working with a really small, really narrow, rotation and roster, and everything just becomes harder.
To put some numbers to that, it's kind of wild to think about the plus minuses in the per 100 possession numbers with JaVale McGee on and off the floor. The Mavs this year, Alec Medford, are 29.9 points worse per 100 possessions with JaVale McGee on the floor than without.
Wait, say that one more again. I don't think I caught that.
The Mavericks, 29.9 points worse
on defense
per 100 possessions when JaVale McGee is on the floor versus without him.
On defense? On defense.
On defense.
We're not talking about offense. On defense, like he's just a big body. It should work.
Further context on this, Dallas' starting five has posted a minus 12.4 net rating across 51 minutes. But when Dwight Powell is swapped in for McGee, that net rating spikes Mike Bassick to a plus 32.9 over 21 minutes. You mean to tell me Dwight Powell isn't effectively 44 points better on the floor when he's on the floor versus JaVale McGee? That's so wild to me. And McGee's on a multi-year contract.
It's fascinating.
He's on a multi-year deal.
And again, small sample, it could, kind of.
Yes, my voice is breaking because he's on a multi-year contract.
I think that's entirely fair. It could level out. But in all reality, it hasn't worked. Like, this is worst case scenario. Outside of like injury, this was worst case scenario.
Powell
right now.
on the bench for this dude, and he comes in here when he gets minutes and he's producing, and he's getting paid $11 million.
903. Dang, y'all are acting like this is a 12-game season. Give Kid a chance. Again, I've acknowledged it's a small sample.
Small sample size.
And in all reality, even in a 12-game sample, you start to take some things from this, right? Like the idea isn't that it's a small sample so you don't lean into or you don't learn anything. And they've only played 7
games.
Right? You learn some things from it, but then you are cautious in the way that you apply those things. Right now, to start, nothing has looked good. It would be one thing if it was like, it's not quite what you want, but there have been something. It looks whole cloth, wholly untenable. And again, I do think that it does not feel right to me in my head. Like the logic doesn't feel right that I've seen him do all the things that they want him to do recently, and that none of those things have shown up yet. I feel like some of those things will show up, but it does put some doubt in my mind that all of it ends up working. The rim running, being able to...
The rim protection that he's supposed to be giving.
Rim protection. And in some ways, we also got to remember, right? The teams they playing against ain't dumb, right? They see the things that those players that you put on the court are incapable of, and they try and exploit them. And one of the things I've noticed is with JaVale McGee is that sometimes you have, like with Utah, for example. And Utah is a unique case because they have guys that move around that can stretch. But JaVale McGee was out here lost trying to keep up with dudes that were moving to the perimeter, and they were having to try and switch because they want JaVale McGee in the middle. There's no point in having JaVale McGee on the court if he's going to be sitting on the left wing guarding a guy on the wing as opposed to in the paint. And it just wasn't fluid. So maybe some of this is like last year when that defense, not even the defense itself, but when the players playing defense all are clicking or in sync. That's when the defense actually works. And maybe that's what you wait for it to work with JaVale. But it just feels like nothing is working, and that's a problem.
Yeah, and I think that's the part where, while yes, to your point, 903, it's a small sample size. What you want to try and do is identify these things as early on as possible so that they don't become trends throughout the course of an 82-game regular season. And I think even the Mavericks have acknowledged that somewhat in the ways that they have handled the Christian Wood situation by not having him in the kinds of crucial minutes of ball games that would allow him to possibly make mental mistakes that would cost them games. Starting to put JaVale McGee on the bench and realizing that Dwight Powell, from an energy standpoint and from several other standpoints when it comes to rim running and all the things, he just has a special chemistry with Luka that I just can't explain. Like the fact that dude, throughout the course of his career, especially now playing with Luka for the last, 4 or 5 years now, he just has a special chemistry with him that is really kind of unexplainable. Because when you look at him at any other point on any other roster, Dwight Powell isn't necessarily a guy that you look at as someone who's a starter in this league. But Spencer Dinwiddie, I thought last night perfectly crystallized why Dwight Powell is so respected in this league and more importantly in that locker room because of all the things that he does, staying ready regardless of whether or not he's playing consistent minutes or not, all the things that he does from a workout standpoint. He's a true leader on this team, and that is why he continues to stick around here. But the return so far on this whole JaVale McGee thing has just not been what you've wanted, given what you expected from him and the capabilities that you talked about that he has shown throughout the course of his career.
I thought you were about to play the audio because, I mean, again, I keep wanting to call him Spencer Sanders, which is not who he is. Spencer Dinwiddie absolutely did lay out a very good case. Tough part about that is that all those things are things that like great glue guys do. But we're not talking about a glue guy role. And again, it's great that he does those things. It's great that he's always ready. It's great that he, always plays hard, plays at 100% all the time, right? It's great that he gives his body and everything. But those are the things that we talk about as additions. The high-level play is what we typically talk about when we're talking about guys that are starters. And I think that's where it gets to be an issue, is that we've seen him as a starter, and the things that he does well, he does incredibly well, especially efficiently. And this is where you're talking about the chemistry that he has with Luka. He just seems to fit like a glove with the way that Luka plays frequently with the pick and rolls and all those things. You're looking for more there, and that was why you tried to make a move. It's just really frustrating that the move that you did indeed make has not only not worked in this very short sample, but it's also gone about as bad as you could want it to go.
And the Mavericks have acknowledged that clearly by the way that they have decided to play JaVale McGee, or the lack thereof, so far this season, and getting Dwight Powell back into the lineup during crucial moments and times of ball games so far this year. A couple of other ones to look at just across the league real quick. Brooklyn is the dumpster fire that they are, changing coaches less than 2 weeks into the year.
Which is funny because less than 2 weeks in the year, you would think it would have to be like atrocious basketball-wise, and I guess it kind of is, but I didn't see anything basketball-wise from this team that we couldn't have foreseen in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that to say, if you wanted to move on from Steve Nash, if you had any inclination, why didn't you do that in the offseason? And maybe the discussion then becomes because your star came in and gave you an ultimatum and you had to like buck back at him, you couldn't like acquiesce to the star because then he running the whole thing. You know what I mean? So you had to keep Steve Nash. But all of that just it reeks of poor organizational structure that more than anything.
And this one is interesting. Golden State's two-way trouble. They can't defend and stop anybody right now. And they're
not really great at offense either. I think they're 20th when it comes to offense. They're in the 20s in all offense, defense.
20th in offense, 25th on defense, 23rd in net rating.
Yeah. So it's all bad. Like they need more guys to step into those bigger roles. And maybe that's a time situation, but as of right now, doesn't look good.
And they're about to lose to the Orlando Magic.
Yeah. And the one that I found interesting here, Los Angeles Clippers offense has actually been bad. Like B-A-D bad. Kawhi Leonard hasn't played very many games. That's
there
scary.
It is.
That's scary, right? Because
that is frightening.
How many months is he off of that ACL injury? Was it ACL or was it an MCL?
ACL.
It was an ACL injury. It's been over a year since he's rehabbed that, and now you start the season where you should be freshest, and he still can't play games.
And they are load managing the hell out of him right now.
That feels like a problem. In addition to that, I loved the John Wall addition as like a ball handler, and they've got such a deep team. With all of those things being the case, they can't pressure the rim. They can't get paint touches, and no offense works without being able to get to the paint. That's how basketball works. I would love to explain it further, but just trust me on this. No offense works without being able to get to the rim, or at least get to the paint and force defenses to collapse and those types of things. And they have been awful at doing that. So it's kind of amazing with all these good players, with players that you anticipate have the capability of getting downhill, they still haven't been able to do that.